Julia, can you please take down the PowerPoint, and all CalRecycle staff who are going to present or answer questions, please turn on your mics for some quick intros, and then we'll get the PowerPoint back up. So we have more people entering, so I'll just give them another quick minute, and then we'll be on our way. And I see some questions coming in. Julia will go over the logistics of how we're going to do Q&A after we do some intros. And then this webinar is relevant for non-local entities or state agencies who may apply for a waiver as well. So just to answer those briefly. Okay, so let's get started. People are still trickling in, but we'll just do intros. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the SB 1383 Department Issued Waiver and Exemption webinar. My name is Ashley Yee. I am CalRecycle's SB 1383 Implementation Manager. And before I turn it over to Julia Doloff, who will go over the logistics, including our live Q&A, I want to introduce you all to who will be presenting and or available to answer any questions. So CalRecycle folks, once I say your name, just wave really quickly. So we have Kara Morgan, Melissa Vargas, and Julia Doloff from the Local Assistance and Market Development Branch. Julia also helped with setting up this webinar, so big thank you to her, lots of behind the scenes. We also have Dan Brown from the Office of Policy Development and Analysis. We have Roberta Goldenpenny and Ray Carranza, who are also from the Local Assistance and Market Development Branch, who will be helping with our live Q&A. So thank you to them for volunteering. Also, please note, Julia's going to be toggling back and forth between the PowerPoint and some of the waivers that are currently online. So please bear with us during those parts and transitions of the webinar. So now take it away, Julia, and everyone else could turn back off their webcams, and Julia will show the screen for logistics.
All right, thank you so much, Ashley. So as Ashley mentioned, I'm going to quickly go over the instructions for how the Q&A session will go, and that Q&A session will be after the presentation. So if you are watching the webinar through the Cal EPA broadcast, you can email your questions to the SLCP inbox. Using the GoToWebinar platform, you can please type in your question into the question pane. Staff will unmute participants in the order that questions come in so that you may ask your question out loud. You will need to unmute yourself on your end through the GoToWebinar platform when you're asked to by CalRecycle staff. Please be sure to state your affiliation before asking your question. And for those watching using the Cal EPA broadcast, we will be verbalizing any questions and responses that are responded to in writing via the GoToWebinar platform so that we make sure you can hear those responses too. And questions and comments regarding the merit of the regulations were responded to during the rulemaking period. So today we will focus on questions or clarifications regarding the waiver requirements and application forms. So now I'm going to hand it over to Melissa for her presentation.
Thank you, Julia. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be discussing the process for completing the department waiver applications and notifications listed on this slide. You can find all waiver application forms and notifications, as well as the rule exemption form from CalRecycle's waiver webpage. So we will be discussing low population for cities and special districts. We will briefly be going over the low population for unincorporated counties since they're very similar. We'll be going over the rural exemption, the elevation waiver, the local education agency, and combine that with the non-local entities, since again, they're both the same waiver forms. And we will very briefly touch on the notice of issued emergency processing facility, temporary equipment or operational failure, as well as the disaster and emergency waiver. So we want to make sure that we leave enough time for questions. So let's get started. We're going to start with the low population waiver for cities, special districts that provide solid waste collection services. Now, who may apply to CalRecycle for a waiver for some or all of its generators from some or all of the requirements of Article 3 in 14 CCR 18984 through 18984.13. To qualify for a low population waiver, the following must apply to the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction disposed less than 5,000 tons of solid waste in 2014, as reported in the CalRecycle disposal reporting system, and the jurisdiction has a total population of less than 7,500 people. CalRecycle approved waivers are valid for a period of up to 5 years. A jurisdiction may apply to renew a waiver at any time up to 180 days prior to the expiration of an existing approved waiver. An approved waiver does not waive a jurisdiction from its obligation to comply with the other requirements of SB 1383 regulations, including, but not limited to, promoting and providing information to generators about waste prevention, community composting, managing organic waste on site, and other means of recovering organic waste. It is also important to note that having such a waiver does not preclude the jurisdiction of implementing AB 341, the MCR, mandatory commercial recycling. So let's take a quick walk through the actual form. So here we have the actual waiver application. Now, you don't have to use this form. It's not a regulatory requirement. We put these forms together as a resource for you to be able to use. So like I briefly discussed, what the parameters or requirements are and the criteria for falling under or a low population waiver is all included in this first paragraph that I just discussed. So let's scroll down. And here we have the person completing, the jurisdiction name. Now the person completing the application should also be the same name that's currently in our logic database. So just make a note of that. You include your email address, the phone number. In case we have any questions, we will be contacting you. And again, here we are. List all the census tracts that are included in this waiver request. How many generators are included in this request? This is a fillable form, so you're able to put the information in these boxes. Now you also have the choice of requesting the number of years. And then here you check the boxes that you are requesting to be waived from Article 3. So if you want to be exempt or waived from the container color requirements for a few years, you can select that box. So you're going to select the box that best suits your needs of being waived from the requirement. So next slide. So the low population for unincorporated counties or special districts providing solid waste collection services is pretty much the same as the previous slide. think we're on the wrong slide. Oh, here we are. Okay, good. Unincorporated counties or special districts providing solid waste collection services that are located in unincorporated counties may apply to CalRecycle for a waiver for some or all of the generators within the unincorporated county from some or all the requirements of Article 3. To qualify for a low population waiver, again, the following must apply. The identified census tracts have a population density of less than 75 people per square mile within the jurisdiction and are located in unincorporated portions of the county. CalRecycle approved waivers, again, are valid for up to a period of 5 years. Now, again, you can apply to renew a waiver at any time up to 180 days prior to the expiration of an existing approved waiver. Again, an approved waiver is not going to waive a jurisdiction from its obligation to comply with the other requirements of 1383 regulations, including but not limited to, again, promoting and providing information to generators about waste prevention, community composting, managing organic waste on site, and other means of recovering organic waste. It is important to note that having such a waiver does not preclude the jurisdiction of implementing the MCR or AB 341. So let's quickly just look at the form and I'll show you where you're going to be entering the census data. So let's scroll down. Here's all your information, contact information. Here's your questions. Did you dispose less than 5,000 tons? What is the current total population? How many generators are included? And what is the duration of how long you're requesting? And then you, again, can select the boxes that you want to waive under the Article 3 and 14 CCR 18984, again, that you're requesting to be waived. So let's move on to rule exemptions. Now, a rule exemption, a rule jurisdiction may apply to CalRecycle for an exemption from complying with the organic waste collection requirements within Article 3 in 14 CCR 18984 through 18984.14. To qualify for a rule exemption, the following requirements must be met. The jurisdiction must meet the definition of a rural jurisdiction as defined in PRC section 42649.8. The jurisdiction's governing body is to adopt a resolution that includes the finding as to the purpose of and need for the exemption. CalRecycle approved exemptions are only valid until December 31st, 2026. An approved waiver does not waive a jurisdiction from its obligation to comply with the other requirements of the SB 1383 regulations. And you can see the theme here, including but not limited to promoting and providing information to generators about waste prevention, community composting, managing organic waste on site, and other means of recovering organic waste. I would like to point out that rural jurisdictions are still required to implement the mandatory commercial recycling law, AB 341. Let's take a walk or look at the form that needs to be submitted. So here we have the rural exemption application. Everything that I just talked about is in the application on the first half of the application. Then as you scroll down, you're going to be entering your pertinent contact information, who's applying, which county. And then again, you're going to check boxes that best apply to you, such as to meet the definition of a rural jurisdiction, and has the governing body of the jurisdiction adopted a resolution that includes a finding as to the purpose of and need of the rural exemption. Once you click those boxes, then you're going to attach the resolution to the application, and you're going to email your waiver applications to our short-lived climate pollutant organics mailbox. So next slide, elevation waiver. Okay, our elevation waiver. A jurisdiction may apply to CalRecycle for a waiver from the requirements to separate and recover food waste and food soil paper if the entire jurisdiction is at or above an elevation of 4,500 feet, or for portions of an unincorporated county with the specific census tracts that are at or above an elevation of 4,500 feet. That's 4,500 feet. The elevation waiver can be for some or all of its residential and commercial generators located at or above 4,500 feet. CalRecycle approved elevation waivers do not expire. Following approval by CalRecycle, residential and commercial generators located within an area that has a waiver may deposit food waste and food soil paper in a disposal container. However, an approved waiver does not waive a jurisdiction from its obligation to provide a collection service that collects and recycles the other types of organic waste specified in 14 CCR 18984.1, 18984.2, or 18984.3 in a manner that meets the requirements of those sections. Additionally, an approved elevation waiver does not waive a jurisdiction from its obligations to comply with the other requirements of 1383. Again, the common theme is that the requirement of 1383 regulations, including but not limited to promoting and providing information to generators about waste prevention, community composting, and managing organic waste on site. Similarly, jurisdictions with an elevation waiver are still required to implement your MCR AB 341. So let's walk through the process for completing the waiver form. Okay, so again, this first few paragraphs are what we've already talked about. I've included in my brief preamble. Then again, you're going to enter the pertinent information such as the jurisdiction's name, the county, who's completing the application. Make sure that that's all completed and filled out. Then you're going to click the boxes that best answer the question, such as, is the jurisdiction located at or above an elevation of 4,500 feet? Yes. Then you also need to include the census tracts that are associated with the application. If you have a lot of census tract, you can attach it, another piece of paper to it, and include that. Then you're also going to include where you got the data on the census tract used in your application. Did you get it from USGS, or did you get your data from other sources? You're going to include where you got those sources. Then you're also going to include the number of generators that you're going to be including in the waiver request, such as residential, commercial, industrial, etc. So you're going to put that number in there. Let's scroll down, and then attach, if you need to, additional piece of paper outlining the additional census tracts that are associated with the application. You're going to sign it and email it to us. Now, I'd like to introduce the manager from CalRecycle's Knowledge Integration Branch, who will be discussing data resources. Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Melissa. So we have a number of resources that we're anticipating being able to roll out in late September or early October. One of the things, just to highlight, that has pushed it back is the full census tract population data was not released until September 16th, so last Thursday. So that's put us a little bit behind in terms of calculating all of the tracts that have less than 75 people per square mile. So what we will be providing is a form that shows and is sortable by county, by jurisdiction, a list of jurisdictions that dispose less than 5,000 tons of solid waste in 2014 as reported in our disposal reporting system, and have a population of less than 7,500 using the latest Department of Finance numbers. That's the California Department of Finance. We also have, we'll be providing a list of census tracts by county with less than 75 people per square mile, the density, using the official 2020 census data. We will be providing a list of counties that meet the rural county definition population of population less than 70,000 using the latest Department of Finance numbers. And then a list of jurisdictions that are entirely at or above 4,500 feet elevation, and a list of census tracts by county that are at or above 4,500 feet elevation. Next slide, please. And in case you're interested in looking up some of this information on your own, I've provided some links in this presentation that you may follow in order to access some of this data from its source. So we have elevation data, which can be obtained from USGS in both a GIS format or in a viewable national map, which is viewable through an online website. We have census tract boundaries, which can be obtained from the US Census, again, both in GIS files, if you have that capability, but also, as you see the last link there, there are PDF maps which show the location of all census tracts by county in California. So if you follow that link, you can pull down the county, download the PDF with the map for your county, and see where the census tracts are actually located. We also have jurisdiction and county population data from the California Department of Finance. I've provided that link there. And as I said, the census tract population data was released on September 16th, so we do have that available for use. So if you have any questions on available data or how to determine if an area is eligible for one of these waivers, please contact us. I'm hopeful that the information we will be providing on our website very soon will provide all the information you need for these population or elevation-based waivers, but if not, please let us know and we will address that.
Okay, Dan, thank you very much for that information. I think a lot of people are going to be accessing the resources that your group is going to provide. Thank you. So let's move on to the local education agency. Now, I'm going to be combining local education agency with the non-local entity waiver since they pretty much ask for the same types of information. Now, a local education agency may apply to CalRecycle as well as the non-local entity waiver, may apply to CalRecycle for a waiver for some or all of the organic waste collection services requirements in Article 5, if the local education agency is located within a jurisdiction or census tract that has been granted a waiver by CalRecycle as specified in 14 CCR 18984.12. Now, a local education agency would look at the waiver website to determine if it is located within a jurisdiction or census tract that has been granted a waiver by CalRecycle as specified in 14 CCR 18984.12. A local education agency may apply to CalRecycle for a waiver based on inadequate space or if it generates a de minimis total amount of organic waste. This waiver is the same as commercial businesses, but CalRecycle issues the waiver instead of the local jurisdiction. Nothing in 14 CCR 18986.2 prohibits a non-local entity from preventing waste generation, managing organic waste on site, or using a community composting site. Let's walk through what needs to be submitted. Okay, so here's the application. Again, I've already talked about what the requirements are. So let's scroll down. Here again, you're going to fill out the information, the agency name, the county, who's completing the application. Make sure you fill in all the blanks. And then you're going to go ahead and check the box that best applies to your situation, such as, is organic generation of less than 20 gallons per week? Is it less than 10 gallons? Has there been a determination that there's inadequate space? Or the local education agency is located within a jurisdiction or census tract that CalRecycle is granted a waiver pursuant to. That is one of the requirements. Then you're going to go ahead and select the requirements of Article 5 that you're requesting that CalRecycle waive. So again, you're going to click the boxes that best meet your specific needs, such as complying with the self-hauling of organic waste requirements. You're going to waive that, you're going to click the box. Providing containers for the collection of organic waste and non-organic recyclables in all areas where disposal containers are located. If you're going to waive that part, then you're going to check the box. After that, you're going to attach the required documentation demonstrating that the standards identified above apply to the local education agency identified on this application. You're going to sign it, print your name, your title, date, and you're going to email it to us. That is the same as your non-local entity. So again, your non-local entity waiver form is going to be the same as your local education agency form. Now, the last two slides, I'm just briefly going to talk about, and it pertains to a jurisdiction's notification that a waiver was issued due to an emergency processing facility, temporary equipment, or operational failure. What these waivers are for is to notify CalRecycle within 10 days of a waiver decision by a jurisdiction per Title 14 CCR Section 18984.13A. If a facility that is processing a jurisdiction's organic waste has unforeseen operational restrictions that have been imposed upon it by a regulatory agency, or if unforeseen equipment or operational failure has temporarily prevented the facility from processing and recovering organic waste, the jurisdiction may allow the organic waste stream transported to that facility by its haulers to be deposited in a landfill or landfills for up to 90 days from the date of the restriction or failure. We don't anticipate a lot of these notifications being submitted to us. So we'll quickly go through the form and move to the final slide. So here's the form. It's a notification. It's optional. It's not a requirement. You can make up your own form if you want. We're doing this for your ease. So let's scroll down and I'll show you what you need to include. Your name, again, your pertinent information. You're going to describe the equipment failure. You're going to include the RDRS number for the recycling and disposal reporting system facility number, and then the start date and the end date of when the facility was temporarily down. You're going to sign, print your name, your title, and date, and email it to us. The last and final topic we're going to discuss very quickly is a disaster and emergency notification. We don't hopefully expect a lot of disasters and emergency notification, but in the event that you're faced with that, you're going to obtain a waiver for the landfill disposal of disaster debris as defined in 14 CCR 17210.1D, when the debris cannot be diverted as defined in 14 CCR 17210.1E. Now, to qualify, CalRecycle must have granted to a jurisdiction a disaster debris waiver granted pursuant to 14 CCR 17210.4 and 17210.9. The approved waiver will waive the organic waste collection requirements of SB 1383 in the affected areas of the disaster and emergency for the duration of the issued waiver. We can quickly show you what that notification form looks like. And here we go. Here are the requirements in the first couple of paragraphs. The next one, common theme, you're going to enter your pertinent information, then answer the 3 questions that we talked about already. So I just want to note that this presentation is a guidance tool developed for informational and example purposes only. This concludes our waiver exemptions presentation. We will now be opening up the chat features for questions. I'm turning it back to you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Dan, for that wonderful information. So this is just a quick reminder of how today's Q&A session will go. To ask a question, if you are watching through the broadcast, please email your question to the SLCP inbox. To ask a question through the GoToWebinar platform, please type your question into the question pane. Staff will unmute participants in the order that questions come in. You must unmute yourself on your end when asked to by CalRecycle staff. And please do remember to state your affiliation when asking your question. So I will now hand it over to my colleague Ray, who will start us off with the first question.
Righty, thank you, Julia. Our first question is from John Wathen. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I will go ahead and unmute you. As Julia stated, please restate your name, affiliation, and ask your question.
John Wathen with Vista Unified School District. And my question is about the definition of jurisdiction. Being a school district, we have multiple locations. Is the jurisdiction considered the entirety of the school district, the aggregate of all our sites, or independent sites?
Hey, thank you for that question. So when we're talking about the jurisdiction, that is a city and county, or a special district that provides solid waste collection services. So that's the definition of jurisdiction. A school district could be located entirely in a city. It may, some school districts, I don't know if actually, maybe you can help me, if some school districts cross jurisdictional lines. They may cross between county and city. So there can be some crossover there. Did that help answer the question?
Yes, and we do. We are actually in 2 different cities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, so depending on the scenario, let's say that only one of the 2 cities qualifies or meets the threshold for a low population waiver or rural exemption or elevation, and the other city doesn't qualify for any of those, then that portion of the school district that's located in the jurisdiction that is eligible for a waiver, that portion of the district could be waived from the collection requirements. So it could be part of your district, part of some of those sites would have to have organic waste collection and some wouldn't. But we'd be happy to follow up and kind of talk through your situation. So let us know. just if you want to give us your email and phone number, we can have a team member follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next question is from Caitlin Lells. Caitlin, go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your state your affiliation and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, my name is Caitlin Lellis. I'm with the County of San Diego, and I had a question regarding the low population waiver thresholds. So for the tonnage and population thresholds, can those apply just to the portion of our jurisdiction that we are applying for the waiver for, or it has to be the entirety of the jurisdiction, if that makes sense?
I think it makes sense. Did you say you're unincorporated county?
Yes, unincorporated county. So we have a large geographic area with less than 75 people per square mile, but on the total, I'm not sure we meet these thresholds.
Yeah, so the 7,500 people, that is specific to cities and a special district that provides solid waste collection services that is in a city boundary. For unincorporated county, what you are looking at are those census tracts within the unincorporated county that meet the 75 people per square mile or under threshold. It's those census tracts that you can receive a waiver from not having to provide collection services from. Did that help answer it?
You know, it did. I think I clicked on the wrong low population waiver here. I'm now seeing that there's one for unincorporated.
No worries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is from Christine Rodriguez. You are now unmuted. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name, and ask your question regarding military installations.
Hey, so this was a question I actually asked a little bit yesterday, but the information today prompted another question. Are each individual building considered their own generators, or would the installation as a whole be considered the generator and just have to delineate the each building under de minimis exemptions for various workspaces and offices?
Yeah, thank you so much. And you know, our meeting yesterday with the military bases are really complex. That is for sure. So to answer your question, when you're looking at de minimis, you would be looking at those individual sites or buildings. So if that particular office building is not generating, say, any food or green waste material, maybe the green waste is being collected by a landscaper and there's a de minimis amount of food waste generated, then for that building, you would, on the form to CalRecycle, tell us, you know, this building is de minimis waiver and won't have organic waste collection services. That way, when CalRecycle comes to conduct a compliance evaluation of the base, we'll know which buildings have the de minimis waiver or physical space waiver. And so that's how you would do that. And you can do that all on one form for your entire base. Did that help answer the question?
Perfect. It did, thank you. So would the installation be considered the single generator, or would I have to list each building as its own generator?
Can you help me out? What do you mean by installation?
The whole base, right? So I was,
Oh.
you know, earlier in the presentation, we were talking about, you know, generators, and I assumed it was in context by building.
You mean for the field, for the generator, number of generators that are waived, or I'm not sure which part of the form you're referencing.
I wasn't sure if the whole military base would be considered a single generator, or if the whole military base would have hundreds of generators within it, so to say, each building being its own.
Yeah. You know, for the bases, it's a little bit different. You're not having to provide, unlike a jurisdiction for a low pop waiver, who has to provide the number of generators that are being waived from service. You're not really doing that on your form.
Okay.
So, yeah, so when it's time for you to fill out the forms, feel free to connect with Arlene or Curie. The chat has their contact info. Feel free and we can help you with filling it out.
All right, our next question is from Anush. Anush, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name and your affiliation, and you can ask your question.
Well, thank you very much. But I think you have already answered the question. I'm new to the city of South Lake Tahoe, and I wanted to change the primary person's name contact. So I've already accomplished that. Thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome to the family.
Thank you.
And I'm just so happy that South Lake Tahoe was saved. And I know you guys have a lot going on there. So let us know if you need any assistance.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Kara. Next question is from Steve Madosky. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself. You're unmuted in our end. State your name, affiliation, and ask your question. It looks like there are a couple parts to it.
Hey, Ray, I don't think Steve has a mic. Is that right? Yeah, I don't have a mic. So
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the question.
that's okay. I'll just do a quick summary so we don't have to repeat. So Steve's question was related to, does the non-local entity, does the jurisdiction have to request the waiver for the non-local entity to be granted? And yes, the way that the language is written, the non-local entity or local education agency does have to be located within a jurisdiction that's been granted a waiver by the department. Now, with that said, if you have any questions about the status of a jurisdiction requesting a waiver, please contact your local assistance and market development liaison. In your case, that's Jeffrey McDaniel. And we'll be glad to let you know the status of the jurisdiction applying for the waiver. The second part of Steve's question was about these large bases. Steve's base is Edwards Air Force Base, and I think it's in 3 counties, I believe, so really big. You know, Steve, for you, what you're going to be looking at are the census tracts that cover the base. You will be able to submit, you know, one form for the entire base, and on that form, you'll note the census tracts that are applicable. So we're happy to do a follow-up with you specifically. Feel free to set up follow-up with Jeffrey, and we can, once we have all the census tract information up, we can do that overlay and help you with filling out that form as well. I hope that answered the question, Steve, and feel free, we can do a follow-up. Thanks, Ray. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Kara. Our next question is from Joanna Jen. Joanna, you are unmuted. Go ahead and unmute yourself, state your affiliation, and ask your questions. I know you asked a few in a row.
Hi, I actually believe my questions have been answered in the chat box. Thank you.
We'd still like to have you read, ask your questions, and because we do have viewers that are paying attention that can't see the chat or the questions. Thanks.
Hey,
Or
Joanna,
you can remember.
And I can do that. I am Joanna, and I am with Best Western Krieger, and we represent several local jurisdictions. My first question was that a special district had applied for a low population waiver with CalRecycle and was informed that the department has not yet set up a system or protocol to accept waivers. Do you know when a protocol will be established and when waivers will be approved? And my understanding is that there are 90 days for the department to determine whether to issue or deny a waiver. So how will jurisdictions have enough time to adopt an ordinance by January 1st of 2022?
Yeah, Joanna. So just as we shared in the chat box, basically once you have that census tract information, you'll know if you have met the threshold or not. CalRecycle does not have the discretion to deny a waiver if you meet the threshold and obviously can't make up the data, but if it's based upon US Census or Department of Finance data. So, we designed it this way. We recognize that jurisdictions need to know which areas are waived and which are not. So, by looking at that data, you'll know now And then we do have to go still through that step of you providing the request and CalRecycle approving it. Ashley, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes. And then so I don't know if it was clear in the webinar, but we will start accepting and receiving waivers on October 1st. So next week. It's already October. Next week. Please send those to the SLCP inbox. So we wrote it multiple times, but it's slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. From there, you'll get we got your waiver, your request, and then that will get back to you. But one thing I do want to note is on those timelines. So with everything for 1383, the regulations actually don't go into effect until January 1st, 2022. So we can't actually send the official approval until January 1st or January 2nd. However, like Kara said, a lot of these department issued waivers are pretty explanatory. If you're submitting the correct information using any of the data that we're providing to you, it will most likely be officially approved on January 1st or January 2nd. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know, Joanna, you had that concern about we have that lack of time frame. But you know, again, it should be pretty obvious if it's going to be accepted or not. So I just wanted to run through that process with you guys really quickly, and please let us know if you guys have any questions on that.
Yeah, and along those lines, we do plan on acknowledging receipt when we receive a form, and we will be sending out notification that if your waiver has been approved, but that notification will note that it is not approved until the regulations take effect on January 1, 2022. So, and if at any time you have any questions, feel free to contact us if you're worried about the status of a waiver or wondering about it.
And then if we have questions for you guys, we'll contact you also in between now and January. We do not have to wait for that January 1st to officially contact you. If there's something maybe missing on your application or waiver that we just have questions about, or even if you're a new entity to us and we just want more information. So we may be contacting you beforehand, informally, but like Kara said, they don't go into effect until Jan 1, 2022, but you should know well ahead of time if they will officially be approved.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an interesting point. I believe, Ashley, we weren't planning on posting the approved waivers until after January 1. So, you know, this gets back to an earlier question. I can't remember if it was Steve or whomever asked it, but you know, you may not know if you're a non-local entity or local education agency if your jurisdiction did apply. So please go ahead. If you meet the threshold, go ahead and submit the form. If there's any issues, we certainly will be in contact, but assume that if you meet the threshold, census tract, you're in a low pop city, for example, a city that meets the elevation or whatnot, please go ahead and submit that form.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So if the jurisdiction submits a waiver, whether it's low population or some other waiver, does that mean that they should assume that they do not have to prepare the SB 1383 ordinance as it relates to Article 3 and the collection requirements, but that it would still work on passing an ordinance by January 1st of all the other requirements under the SB 1383 regulations that are not waived?
So a point of clarification, are your clients cities versus county?
They are both cities and they are special districts.
And they are special districts. Okay. So yeah, if for example, if a city meets the threshold for low pop, rural exemption, elevation, then yes. And the way that the model ordinance is designed, as you know, it's kind of that plug and play. So you could pull out those aspects that are not applicable. Please keep in mind, however, that cities would still be required, as well as in an unincorporated area that is covered by a special district that provides solid waste collection services. Those, unless it's a rural exemption, the mandatory commercial recycling and mandatory commercial organics recycling laws still apply. So we've tried to address that in the model ordinance. So you should be able to look at the model and see those sections of the ordinance that you can actually take out because you are received a waiver. Did that help, Joanna?
Thank you. And if a application for a waiver was submitted prior to October 1st, does that mean that that has to be resubmitted?
Well, first and foremost, we would, I guess it, well, probably be a good idea if all of the information that you see now in the forms that were provided, then you could go ahead and just send a note to us and we can take a look at that. Just what you want to make sure that what you submitted previously covers all the information that we're asking for in the form. But like Melissa said, you don't have to use our form. So as long as we have the info, we should be good to go. But I hate for it to be lost. So just go ahead and send us a note.
Okay, thank you. I also had other questions. I didn't know if I should ask them. So under the SB 1383 regulations, an organic waste generator is a person or entity that is responsible for the initial creation of organic waste. Can you please clarify how generators is counted on the waiver form? Is it then by residents, occupants, or persons, which may result in double counting if you reside and work in the same jurisdiction? Or is it the customer account holders for solid waste collection, which would be essentially one per household and one per business?
Yeah, the latter.
Thank you. And the last question I have is, what is the metric or source for population? Is it the Department of Finance data, or is it the US Census data, or either?
Dan, you're on.
Sorry about that. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I was answering a different question at the time.
Oh, no, thanks. What is the source for population? Is it the Department of Finance data, or is it the US Census data, or either?
It's really either. And for census tract level data, the US Census really is the only source that we can use. Because that's the one that has the appropriate resolution for use. However, when we're looking at county and city populations, the Department of Finance ends up being a lot more timely in their supply of the data, which is one of the reasons why we use it for county and city. But both are absolutely vetted and appropriate sources of population data. And the regulations do not specify that one has to be used over the other. So really, for census, it almost has to be census tract. For this US Census data has to be used, but otherwise, it's somewhat neutral to the source.
Thank you. That concludes my email questions.
Right, thank you both. As a reminder, we might not get to everything before we hit the 3 o'clock deadline or end of this webinar.
Hey Ray, can we go to some of the ones that we've not put a response in the chat box, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
But if we don't get to everyone, just go ahead and follow up with your land rep or send the inquiry to the SLCP inbox. So let's skip ahead then. The first question that we have without a response in the chat is from Wallace Lowe. Wallace, we are going to go ahead and unmute you. Please unmute yourself, state your name, affiliation, and ask your question. All right, I'll go ahead and read it. It says, for the low population waiver for unincorporated counties, question number 4, are we waiving the department waiver when we select them in section 18984.11 and 18984.12?
I'm not sure if anyone on the team, Ashley, I'm not sure I understand the question. So Wallace, it might be helpful if you can put your contact information in the chat and we can follow up with you. Unless Ashley, you I'm not sure I fully understand the context.
I think I may. So when we put in those check boxes for the low pop waivers, we listed every subsection within Article 3, which includes the actual waivers. So I don't believe you would actually check that unless you're trying to waive yourself from a waiver. But you would probably check the other ones that you want to waive yourself from, because I believe 11 and 12 are the waivers granted by the jurisdiction, and then the waivers granted by us. So because of the way that the regulations are written, in our applications, we had to list every single thing in Article 3. So you probably wouldn't check that, if I'm understanding that question correctly.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Yep, I think you nailed it. And again, that's the way that we wrote the regulations. We didn't carve out point 11 and point 12. So again, we had to just list it all. So thank you for that question.
All right, our next question is from Ray. I'm going to butcher the last name, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Ray, you are unmuted, so please state your affiliation and ask your question. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask Ray's question. Her question is...
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Hi, Ray Beimer, I'm representing the city of Hidden Hills. We are a part of LoRa, which is we have a JPA, and our rep thought that maybe we were to be applying for the waiver through the JPA. Is that how it's to go, or are we supposed to apply for it as a jurisdiction independent of our JPA?
So as a city, first and foremost, as a city, you have to be able to meet the threshold of current population of less than 7,500 people and 2014 disposal as reported in the disposal reporting system of under 5,000 tons. If in 2014 you were a part of the regional agency and disposal was reported as a big group number, then you may not meet the threshold for a waiver. So I'm happy to do a follow-up, Ray, and look at your particular situation. So the JPA, if the JPA was delegated, could it apply for individual members on behalf of members? But the key is that that individual city or county has to be able to meet the threshold on its own. Does that help answer the question?
It does. The city does, independent of the JPA or independent of LoRa, but if we are having a cumulative, we have been a part of them since prior to 2014. So
yeah,
if we're talking cumulative disposal, that's going to be a problem. So
I think it is. I think that will, even if the city is meeting the population factor, you'll have to look and see what the disposal was reported in 2014, and it's highly possible that you would not be, the city would not be eligible for a low population waiver.
So who would I follow up with regarding that to get kind of a definitive kind of answer or conclusion, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, Laura, please follow up with Primo Nunes, and Primo can connect with me if there's any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They're actually the ones that told me to maybe get on this call and.
Okay. Then why don't you go ahead and shoot me an email, and we'll talk it through, and I'll get my team on the phone.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, next up is Edward McNair. You are now unmuted on our end. If you could just state your name, affiliation, and ask your question regarding federal agencies. Edward, you are self-muted. Okay. The question is, are federal agencies that do not distribute in commerce affected by 14 CCR 18984, Article 3?
So, Edward, I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. Ashley, do you? Basically, if you're a federal agency and you generate any type of organic waste, so fiber, cardboard, could be green waste, food waste, or any of the other organic materials, then you are subject as a non-local entity to the regulations. So if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to either send an email to the SLCP inbox, or you can also send an email to Arlene Iwahiro or Curie Kenwella, and we can follow up on your specific situation. Thanks.
All right, our next question is from Daniel Myers. Daniel, you are now unmuted. Go ahead and state your question and your affiliation. Daniel, I think we're having some audio issues. Yeah, we're having some audio issues on your end, Daniel. Go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll have them answer it for you. His question is, a large portion of the city of Los Angeles is in a green waste quarantine area. Is there a waiver for this material?
Melissa, you covered this in your presentation. Would you like to respond to this one?
Thanks, Kara. Yes, you can apply for a waiver for the quarantine. If you're under quarantine for sending organic waste, ag waste to a composter, you can fill out one of our waiver forms and submit it to us, and we'll review. Does that answer your question? I'm guessing yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel.
Audio problems. Daniel, please feel free to follow up with your LAMD liaisons, Mia Hunt and Primo Nunez, and they'll be able to walk you through the waiver form. Thanks so much. Ashley?
Thanks, Kara. So thank you everyone for your questions. I think we had a great lively discussion. It is 3 o'clock, so we do have to wrap up. But like Ray said, for anything that we did not answer, please either contact your local assistance and market development representative or contact the SLCP inbox. Or for those of you on the chat who we said that Arlene or Curie would contact you, they'll contact you. Or if you need to contact Kara or anyone else, please feel free to contact them. So thank you guys all again for participating in our webinar. Just a general follow-up, we will be posting this PowerPoint with the talking points once we make it ADA accessible, along with the recording. So please sign up for the SLCP listserv, as that's what we'll announce when everything is posted on our website. In the meantime, have a great day and keep asking these great questions. Talk to you guys soon.